Everyone, this is Doug Custon, and you're listening to the WWFM podcast, which aspires to be the go-to source for all things workforce management. Today's guest is Matthew Armbruster, Workforce Manager for the Americas Customer Care Operations of Cepheid. We get into his journey into workforce management and also what it's like to cut new ground in an established company when you're employee number one to carry a workforce management title. This includes how to convince stakeholders to invest and buy into a workforce management process, even when few stakeholders even know what workforce management is all about. Hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Okay, it's time to welcome our special guest, Matthew Armbruster, who's a seasoned manager with more than a decade of experience in operations and workforce management. Matthew, great to have you here on the podcast. Thanks for making the time and also for getting up so early in the morning. What time is it for you at the moment?
6 a.m.
6 a.m. That 6 a.m. for me is like zombie time. My brain doesn't work. So I don't know if you're an early man, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here. I'm humbled and honored to be included in this series and really look forward to diving in and talking about workforce management and contact centers.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're going to get into workforce management topics in a bit. But before we do, I'd love to, for everyone listening today to get to know you a bit better.
Sure.
So first off, what part of the world are you based in? I think we've already had a bit of a hint. How long have you been at your present company and what were you doing before that?
Yeah, so I'm located in Greensboro, North Carolina, where we experience all 4 seasons in a week. It's been interesting this week so far. Starts at 40 degrees and ends at 75, 80 degrees. So it's been quite interesting. So right now, I currently work for a company called Cepheid. They're a California-based molecular diagnostic testing company.
Wow.
Part of a larger corporation, the Danaher Corporation. Been with them just about 3-4 months, so relatively new role, but really exciting. Prior to that, I spent time in fairly large corporations, working as either an analyst, supervisor, and into management for the last several years in that capacity.
Well, it's super interesting industry. I think like my background is all sort of financial services, and whenever I sort of say this, people's eyes glaze over. So I don't know if you're getting sort of involved in kind of the more scientific side of the company, but yeah, super interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely a very different experience than what I've had. It's still kind of in that healthcare realm, but I spent most of my formidable years, we'll call it, on kind of commercial health plans and things of that nature. For a large multinational healthcare company. And then got into more of I consider it kind of a consulting environment, but more of I'll just go with kind of more of the consulting side of it from that aspect for state-based and kind of more federal contract type stuff.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And what's a regular day for you? Just take us through a normal day for you, if there is such a thing.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of workforce management, right? I don't think there's ever really been a structured day. I think there's always kind of new fires or new projects coming up, new ideas. Right now, for me, given the scope of my role and I think the importance within the company, a little bit of background, I am the first person within the Cepheid organization to have this workforce management title. So it's a very, very new role and way of thinking within the organization and their tech support world. So right now, I spend a lot of my day data collecting, sharing information, working with our leaders cross-functionally to share trends, building a lot of dashboards in Power BI. Albeit it's not my my wheelhouse. I'm not a data scientist by any shape of the imagination, but really just finding creative ways to share data trends, both at the call and kind of daily performance arena, trending out just our daily targets, whether it's service level, live rates, abandonment rates, ASAs, et cetera. But really that side of it, and then spending a lot of time working at the agent level, just looking at varying trends that we have. We've got kind of a hybrid, right? So we've got the call side of the house, and then you've got kind of the back office, which is kind of the incoming cases from a tech support perspective that range from in varying complexities that take time to handle that. So a lot of time working with our leadership to craft out what that forecast of one, call volume is looking like, and then two, secondarily, what our case volume is going to be and what that's going to require from a back office.
I think it's always one of the most challenging roles that you can do is when you're cutting through new paths, when you're going into a company or enterprise that just literally hasn't seen workforce management before, and often people have misconceptions around what workforce management is as well. What's one of the, sort of the biggest challenges that you had early days in terms of convincing stakeholders that what's this workforce management thing?
I love this question, right? Kind of a little bit of my thought process when I first got into this role, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit later in the podcast. But when I really got into this, it was a job. I had no idea what contact centers were, or what even remotely what workforce management was. I have an accounting degree by trade, and I, on a whim, up and moved from Pennsylvania to North Carolina, without a job, had gotten out of college, kind of figured out my life, and interviewed with one of the VPs of sales with United Healthcare. And there's a really interesting story behind that. But I did the interview still kind of like, what is this? It's numbers, it's data analytics, it's routing, it's calls, it's a bunch of different things, right? But it just, it turned out to be a really good role, one that I was just eager to get started, right? First job out of college, I just want to go, right? Just want to find something, I'll figure it out later, kind of thing. And I find a lot of, in the contact centers, I think a lot of us, I think you and I have talked about this in past conversations, right? Not really sure how we got there, but hey, here we are, right? So yeah, I think one of the things, and I learned this, I'd say fairly early on, to me, it's a very important role within the organization. One that I know has grown in scope over the past, 5, 10, 15 years, at least since I've started in the workforce management world. But one of the things that I really try to highlight is that it's not a professional babysitting service. It's not a us versus them. We're not trying to catch you on different things. I think that's one of the things I think I like to change the perception of. And even this current role, given how new the scope is, it's a lot of education, a lot of data sharing. But I think one of the biggest things that I kind of come across again is it's this, you're trying to catch me doing this, or you're
like a big brother type thing. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I was looking for. So yeah, I think just trying to educate on the benefits of this platform, this team, this set of processes in any role that I've been in has really been probably the biggest win for me.
Yeah. We're going to get into workforce management for sure. We shouldn't. A little bit of a teaser for later, for sure. One thing I did want to ask you, actually, because I know from speaking to you before, you also kind of got like a psych thing going on. So I know that you're looking to, or you're in the process of opening a brewery. Can you tell us a bit about that? Is that still on, or and when can I expect my first sample here?
My cousin and I have been kicking the idea around for a little while now. I mean, I grew up kind of in that world. My uncle started a brewery back in the mid 90s when the craft brewing craze was hitting the country. So you had your Dogfish Heads, your Sam Adams, the Sierra Nevadas of the world, that are obviously very large brewery operations today. Yeah, it's just been something that I've always wanted to be a part of. I've dabbled in the homemaking, although I'm not so sure it turned out the best, but I gave it the old college try.
I think I nearly blew myself up when I tried it once. So for sure.
It was a very interesting process. Of course, we're out in the back patio and the turkey fryer out there, and we're making beer and we're drinking beer and having a good old time. And yeah, kind of fast forward today. My cousin's the head brewer at a brewery in Charlotte, and we just kind of kicked the idea around as kind of a little bit of a side project. And you know, not being too long-winded about it, we're in the process of kind of finding where we want it to be first.
Sure.
We're
Yeah.
probably a good 8 to 12 months away. We got to figure out a number of different things. So I would say you could probably expect your first batch sometime in maybe 2023.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna have to be patient then. Okay, I'm sure there's plenty in Germany that I can sample in between. So
Yeah, I think you could. I think you could figure your way around there.
I'm pretty sure. Okay, cool. So it's one of the things that I love to ask, because I think you get a really good feeling for who you are. Is the people that that have influenced you. So who would you say the 3 people that have been the most influential to you? And it can be anybody. Doesn't have to be anyone famous, but of course, if it is.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's plenty more than 3 people, but I would say probably in that realm are obviously my parents, right? Just growing up with them, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, raised my sister and I. I know what effort that took. My dad growing up in the steel world, and I would ride my bike to and from the house to the office and just kind of get an idea on what the steel world was about, at a young age, and have lunch with him in the office and just kind of see the site, the operation. And I actually ended up working there for a number of years, later in high school, and then even on weekends in college. So I think just, like I said, my parents, right? And I always looked up to them, and my dad's work ethic, my mom, dedicating her time and energy to raising my sister and I, which I'm sure was not an easy task. And even we still joke about that today.
Is it? That sounds like sounds like another time of the story, but it sounds like an insight into your childhood. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we'll go that deep today.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, besides them, I'd say I have an aunt that lives very close to me here. Actually, she was the one that suggested that I kind of up and move to North Carolina from Pennsylvania, kind of figure out where I wanted to go. And she was the president of a local corporation here, and I saw how successful she was. And I got to meet a lot of her friends through various trips and travels down here to the South, which is, albeit, a lot warmer than up north at this current time. But I think just her business drive, her insights, the level of detail that she had. And we actually had what we called a boot camp when I was actually living with her, kind of trying to figure out finding the job and get my own place. And it was I would call it successful. I grew up pretty quickly. I think just the friendship that she and I have, just the insights I get from her from a business perspective. The last person I'd say, I have a buddy of mine named Brian. Unfortunately, he recently passed away.
Sorry to hear that.
Months, but yeah, he was a very, very good friend of mine. I met him during my time in Pittsburgh, when I was with United Healthcare, and we hit it off. I mean, he's the one that started my Starbucks addiction, so I get to blame him for that. But I think just his, he had a few years on me, but I think just his calmness, his ability to handle varying situations, right? We would pretty much talk every single day, at least, for first 15, 20 minutes a day in the morning. And he was located in California. So when I was driving back and forth to Raleigh every day, when I was with a line, I'd call him because he was up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning Pacific. Wow. So it ended up really well. We get to talk for the last half hour of my drive or so. But yeah, I think, and why I mentioned those two is you'll find with me that I don't shy away from feedback. I actually run to it. I really appreciate the candor, and I think a lot of people saw the diamond in the rough when I was first coming up. I was a 22-year-old kid out of college, right? Thought the world owed me something, and I quickly found out it does not. I was like, hey, I'm only making $100,000 out of college, and that was definitely not the case. But I think just with them, and why I bring them up is I went through what I would call a kind of a very candid learning feedback process, where I asked them to don't hold back either. I want you to critique kind of where you see what are the things I do well, and where do you think I have opportunities as I continue to move up in the business world and build credibility and bench strength and things of those nature, right? So they were really good about providing some of that feedback and really, really good conversations. And in my aunt's true fashion, it wasn't just the feedback part of it. It was, you have homework to do now after this. So, but yeah, I think those two were really enjoyed their time. But I mean, obviously there's been a number of people. The one I'll mention, my old boss, Kim, she was my first manager when I moved into a management role. I know this is 4, but she really was the epitome of what a boss should be, in my opinion. I mean, it worked out well for me and my personality style. I like to go and do. I don't like being micromanaged or, people hovering over your shoulder. What are you doing today? No, she allowed me the space to go do what I wanted to do. She was there when I needed her.
Super important.
Yeah, it was a really good dynamic, and we had a lot of really good, successful years together before I moved on.
Yeah, no, I can tell straight away the people that influence you, they're all personal connections. They're all people that have kind of like touched you personally. I think that's super cool. So just getting into kind of workforce management type topics, how would you, in your own words, describe what workforce management means to you?
To me, it's a partnership between kind of your traffic side, right, and your operations leadership, where it's a support department to help customer experience, right? The routing is the front end, right? And I've seen where routing, forecasting, WFM, I understand, right? Forecasting is a part of that side of it.
Sure.
Operations where they're all separate pieces. And I've had functions where they all kind of tie into one role. But really, to me, it's the process side of the routing piece, right? It's the how do we submit exceptions for this process, and what trends are we finding, and call arrival patterns, really diving into some of those rabbit holes, right? That you can spend a lot of time really understanding, but it really, to me, it's a combination of people, processes, and just a varying methodology, in my opinion.
And I mean, given that one of your biggest influences was your parents, how would they describe what you do for a living?
I was reading this question. I had to laugh because I hear this a lot. I have a couple of good friends that they're out of Florida, and when I was in the middle of like job hunts or things of that nature, like, what do you do? And I'm like, I don't even know how to describe it, because I mean, they don't even know. They're like, we want to tell our friends kind of what's happening, but we have no idea what you do.
It's so true.
Going back to the parent thing, right? I mean, my dad grew up in the steel business. They're nowhere near a contact center, right? My mom was a stay-at-home mom and worked in the banking industry during her earlier years. And how would they describe it? They have no idea. It's just kind of, I tell them I work in contact centers. I liken it to, think about when you call into your cell phone provider, your cable company. We handle all of the experience piece, from the IVR down to the call delivery side of it, making sure that agents are there to take your call. But that's a really funny question, just in the fact that I found that people think it's either more of an HR driven role, or they have no idea what it is.
I had that question myself, or a version of that question myself recently, where I was asked, can you explain what you do if you were explaining it to an 8-year-old? I was like, forget it. It's like, even just trying to go into the customer service type arena, it's like, what's a customer? I was like, okay, forget it.
I mean, it's really interesting, right? I mean, I think kind of going back to when I first started, I had applied for the role. I had no idea. I mean, the VP that I interviewed with took a chance on me. I mean, I had an accounting background. I got the data and the analytics, right? And the numbers. But other than that, I mean, no clue what it was. And here I am, 15, 16, 17 years later in my career, and I made a go of it. So it's a really, really interesting role to have, especially when you dive into what is it that you do? Let me just give you the Cliff Notes version and try to kind of dumb it down, so to speak.
And you sort of took the traditional path of accounting, maybe, thinking of finance a career. What then? How did it happen? How did you get into workforce management?
Yeah, I moved, like I said, I moved down here from Pennsylvania. My aunt offered me to come stay with her, get some connections. It was I guess I'll just call it right place, right time. There's probably an element of luck there. You got this, 22, 23-year-old kid that has never done this before. And I mean, when I got in there, I'm like, wow, this is a pretty technical type role. But I think the tenacity and the drive that I have, you just go for it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I had never obviously been in that space before, had no clue what I was getting myself into. I kind of got a laptop and a book about yay big. Go figure, go have fun. Okay, sure, no problem. But yeah, it's been an interesting ride. I know I mentioned this earlier. How I got into it, I really have no idea. Other than I had lunch with a VP of sales, and it was a connection through my aunt and a bunch of her friends. And I like to think I made a good enough impression that he was able to pass my resume on, and I happened to get an interview, and the rest is history, right?
There you go. Yeah. For me personally, it was there was a role going in a department called mission control. So I was like, oh yeah, I always wanted to be an astronaut. So that's for me. It didn't work out that way, but yeah, I think we've all got interesting ways that we found workforce management. None of us, I think, entered into school and had that question where, what do you want to do when you grow up? Yeah, I want to be a workforce management professional. That's the one. I don't think we'll ever hear that. Well, maybe we will, but it's interesting.
Yeah, it's I know I mentioned earlier, just if I can humor you with a funny story, kind of how all this panned out. Like I said, I moved down here with whatever savings I had from working in the steel warehouse for a couple of months or a year or so, trying to figure out where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. I came down here, interviewed, and it was getting close to that time where I need to either find something or move back home or figure out what to do with my life, right? During this time, my cousin was getting married out in California. So I was in the middle of traveling out there, and I happened to walk into, I think it was a Memphis airport, and thoughts are running, right? I finished the interview process, hadn't really heard anything. It's like, what am I going to do? And I walk into a bookstore and happened to pull, I think it was a Forbes magazine, and I just flipped it open. And the very first picture or profile that came up was the then CEO of United Healthcare. And within minutes, my phone rang and I got the job offer. So it was just bizarre, I mean, here I am, like, what am I going to do? But it was really a very bizarre situation. Just I look back and kind of chuckle on it that someone was looking out for me. It looks like so.
Yeah, like someone was literally saying, "What the, that's freaked me out a bit." That's very interesting.
Yeah. It was weird.
So if you had, I mean, you've been around for more than a decade. I think coming up to 2, right? So I'm sure you've seen an awful lot of different scenarios, and of course you're in a complete unique situation right now. But if you had I don't know, $100 million to be able to spend on workforce management tech, no red tape, how would you spend it?
Well, I think I'd probably go live on a beach somewhere in the middle of me. Can I run it from there?
Well, yeah, maybe that's quite fancy that right now as well with some of the weather that's going on in Berlin. But yeah,
it'd be nice to open your windows or your doors and look at the ocean and play traffic controller. $100 million. Yeah, I mean, I think heavily, obviously, technology, right? I mean, AI, that's a huge thing now. Albeit I'm not anywhere near an expert in that area, but I think just finding ways to simplify the forecasting process and get probably a lot better data behind some of that. We as professionals talk a lot about those spikes that we get, during whatever varying intervals. I mean, I would just find a solution that automated a lot more of the processes today. I look back and there was a guy that I worked with when I first started United Healthcare, real technical, real data driven, more mathematics background type person. And he used to tell me that he's like, look, I know exactly what's going to happen when I just click a button, it changes all the skill profiles and we never have an issue. I was in awe. I was like, wow, your job's pretty easy then, I guess. But yeah, I think just investing in AI where a platform that gives you everything, right? And if we're talking blue sky here, when you look at the varying platforms today and even, companies like your streaming services, your Netflix, they don't offer everything that you want, right? You have to go and find varying different services that kind of looking for, I don't know, different things, right? But I think really the AI piece of it's going to be a really, really big part of the future. I've worked with a couple of companies in the past, just working with them to understand what that looks like and how that supports, just the call quality, picking out customer sentiment, things of that nature. I think to me, I think the big part about this, and even going back to the WFM side, right, is we're really that frontline defense of how do we set the agents up or the associates or whatever you want to call the frontline agents for success. So, I know whisper tones are a decent thing, but I think just finding ways to help support them in the call types that they're getting, or some of the auto routing that we could set up where. I know there's some limitations within varying platforms, especially those that connect to like a CRM. You only get one phone number that's there. But how do we solve for that where we can automatically route no matter what number they're calling in through? And I know there's some stuff that exists today on that side of it, but
it's definitely come an awful long way from what the sort of 20 years ago for me. And it's I think it's interesting what you said about right at the start around the forecasting side of the WFM tech out there I think is still a long way to go. I think that it's still too basic for today's needs. So for me, I think you hit a nerve for the sort of challenges that I'm definitely contending with.
Yeah, I think that's probably out of my WFM skill set. I tend to focus more on strategy, execution, and longer term planning. I would say
Got you.
If I had to admit it, I think the forecasting piece would probably be the piece of the arsenal that I have that's probably the weakest.
Yeah.
Of course, I get the fundamentals, the processes, and the thought process.
For sure.
Right. But I think taking some of that off of the WFM plate, how do we in real time can continuously look at some of the evolving forecast and automatically shift agents around? I have to imagine some of that exists somewhat, but to me, I think the way of the future is really that AI driven data modeling in the background. And I know in past companies we've used that for varying things, but yeah, I mean, really to me, the forecasting has always been the biggest piece of the puzzle that never seems to, I don't want to say come together, because it's a bit of a science, and it's a bit of a kind of a luck of the draw, so to speak. I mean, and how do you predict when someone's going to physically call in, right? You get these spikes. So, because one of the things I hear a lot is we need to plan for the spikes. I mean, yeah, we can certainly do so over a period of time, but I think how do you engage with the WFM team and the operations leadership to make more real-time succinct changes to support that customer? And I think that's always been, I don't want to call it a struggle. It's always been probably a bigger piece of the day of any workforce management professional, is just the constant skilling, reskilling, aligning the staff to the varying call volumes that are coming in.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? That automation, that real-time space, it's all about agility. So yeah, I think AI definitely has a big part to play. Do you think, do you think there's going to be workforce management jobs? Is it still going to exist, say, in 20, 30 years? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, like anything, technology is a big player, but you still have to have, the people input. You still have to have support in the modeling side of it and in the input of data.
Yeah.
I don't think you can automate everything in this particular space. I think there's always going to be some level of input. I mean, I guess you could go back to the $100 million. I mean, if you could build a platform that would help support all of that, I mean, maybe. I don't see this going away. And there's a lot of talks about, especially with the larger companies when they start automating different with robots and things of that nature. I mean, there's still some level of oversight that has to occur from a human side of it. Maybe the role shifts and emerges as a different scope or part of the organization. One of the things I was thinking about, just kind of where in the workforce management space and where it lives today, it's almost like this standalone, you either love us or you hate us.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the stigma that goes with the role. And I know I've worked diligently and really hard throughout my career to kind of erase some of that stigma around we're a support department, we're a partnership department.
That's it. Yeah.
We're not here to tell you how to do your job or micromanage you or catch you doing X, Y, and Z, right, when you're supposed to be on the phones. I mean, yeah, we need to have some level of accountability and credibility across both sides of the aisle. But yeah, I think it's definitely going to be an interesting next 20 or 30 years. I mean, kind of back to what you said earlier, and just I think the longevity of our careers in this space. Yeah, it's been eye-opening to see where I started and what the technology looked like then to where it is now. And when I look at some of the jobs and the spaces that are out in the market right over my career, I'd almost say that workforce management needs to fall under that customer experience side.
Yep.
I think there's
100% agree. Yeah.
I think there's this methodology or just thought process around, WFM is almost, in my opinion, kind of a standalone. It's here. Mm-hmm. Back to what we talked about earlier, what is workforce management? Where does it live? That type of stuff. I mean, I've given a lot of thought and credence to this, that it really needs to fall under that customer experience side and not just a contact center type mindset, right?
Yeah.
When you think about it, I mean, we have a lot of influence, and I think this is one of those, I don't want to call it myths, but the WFM side of it, in my opinion, especially with the IVR and the routing, is the front line of defense for any company from a support perspective. I think that really, this role would wrap well under that overall customer experience or customer success type model, where when I'm out there looking at the space, you almost have here's your contact center, here's your WFM, and then you have almost the complete opposite end of the spectrum of the customer success side of it that seems to be completely different and almost evolved out of this space, but completely separate in terms of thought process, methodology, and really function within a company.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. For a long time, you were talking about stigma earlier, but for a long time, workforce management sort of fallen into this. Is it somewhere in between finance and operations? And it's naturally then had a big flare when it comes to productivity, efficiency, which in many people's minds doesn't go hand in hand with customer experience. The reality is that you can't do one without the other, or you can do one without the other, but it's certainly going to influence each other quite heavily. And especially now with the way that customer demands are becoming that much more intense than they probably were, even 5 years ago. And yeah, I believe workforce management has a huge part to play when it comes to customer experience, and it's probably time that people wake up to that bit as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? If you talk about the finance piece of it, for years, and I believe you feel the same way. I think we've talked about this, the contact center side of the business, right? The customer support, that piece of it has evolved from a cost center to almost a customer retention center, right? I mean, the differentiating of service that people are expecting from any level of support, right, has, I think, evolved and grown even more so, that companies have been forced to invest more heavily in that side of the business, where before, maybe like you said, it's headcount driven. That's where most of the money comes from. So I completely agree. I think in this current role I have, we spend a lot of time talking about the financial aspects of it, right, and what impacts we're having on that particular cost center side of it. And I think that's a great point, that there's almost this, and even in this role, it's why it's even a little more different than the past, is I do spend more time understanding the finances of the business and how that shapes out. And look, here's how we can save you money, and not just headcount, but by just becoming more efficient, more thoughtful in our processes. Staffing model, what's our, cases per hour or per day, looking at those side measurements. I think that's how you save the money in the headcount, right? But you can repurpose those to other sides of the organization. I mean, I did something early on in my career. I want to say it was probably, I'll use air quotes, $1 million save, right? It was like 20 FTE. We collapsed a couple of skills, and just by doing that, we saved the 20 FTE. We could repurpose to other training classes. We could cancel training classes.
Yeah.
But I think that's the value of WFM, right? And the thought process behind it is, it's almost that lean methodology, right? Do more with less, but without jeopardizing the morale of the people. Look, I have a lot of respect for those. I've never taken frontline phone calls. I don't know how they do it. I have a lot of respect for it, because there's no way I could take any phone calls today. But I think it's just, that piece of it has just continued to evolve, and I think we're getting a lot closer to that finance piece than probably over the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, and the interesting thing for me as well is that time and time again I've seen. So I mean, if you think about getting to a customer and answering that call or contact or whatever it might be really quickly is generating customer experience. That's one side of it. I think even the drive for productivity. So, I mean, what customer? I'm speaking for myself here, but I don't like to contact a contact center and spend the next 6 hours talking about the problem that I've had. I want to, the least amount of customer effort. Right. So I think even that drives sort of productivity, where you're doing maybe outlier stuff, that's contributing to customer experience for sure.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said, right, for the call handling side of it, right, and the efficiency piece of it. But then there's also the side of how do you balance that, obviously handle time is a very large input from my financial aspect of it. Not only that, but a planning aspect, right? How do you balance the call control, call handling side of it with building rapport with the customer or consumer on the other end, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I remember early on there was a lady that was in the contact center, and she was older, and her handle time was relatively high. But when you go in and listen to her calls, she really, the call types that she was handling were more, it was an older population that they just wanted to have a conversation too. I mean, you think that particular skill, particular call type, it's like, look, there's nothing that's wrong here. And it's one person, right? I mean, it's not going to drive your handle time up by 10 or 20 seconds. It's going to be almost null and void. And I think this is where I've evolved in my career, is I view myself as, yes, I'm a workforce management professional, but I fully understand what role this particular department and job or skill set contributes to the overall business, right? I mean, I really struggled with that early on. Like, as a 20-something-year-old, it was just a job. I had no idea I was going to turn this into a career, but I really, as I evolved and grew and understood more about what contact centers do, and obviously as the technology has grown and morphed over the years, it was important for me to understand the impact that we have on the front line, on the operations leadership staff, and really just the overall customer experience. And I found in various roles that we spend a lot of time doing HT remediation. Like, look, here's your top 10 people. If you can shave 20 seconds off of these as a group, it's going to save you like 5 FTE on the back end. I mean, obviously just spitballing numbers here, but those are some of the things that really traditionally, in my experience, had fallen under more of the operations leadership side, where we were just more of a planning mechanism. Here's what to expect. Here's what to do. Oh, you want some extra coaching? Perfect. Here's these pockets you can do it. And I think even the past conversation that you and I have had, and even as I talk with industry professionals, I want to morph my side of it, right, is not just a WFM, but more of a customer experience contact center professional. Because I think, as this role continues, you talked about the $100 million, right? I mean, I think there is a great olive branch or partnership that we continue to morph on our side of the business and really be a partner and really reshape that us versus them mentality.
Yep.
That I saw so much as a young professional coming up in the world.
By the way, I think that's brilliant advice for anyone wanting to pursue a workforce management career is understand your outputs, and understand how that connects with the rest of the business and the business goals. I think I've definitely had that question before as well, where I can't quite seem to get any credibility with stakeholders. It's probably because you're planning for something, or planning in a way that isn't aligned to their goals. It's probably something as simple as that. So brilliant advice for anyone pursuing a workforce management career, for sure.
Yeah, I think just along that topic, right, if I may, I think for me, it's, as I've come up in the world and I've done some mentoring of just varying levels of people in the organization, really, to me, it's just be curious, ask the questions.
Yeah.
But also be cognizant of what it is and what role we play in the world, right? I mean, we talk about some of the stigmas and the myths that are associated with this world, right? I think one of the things that we did really well as a team, and I probably could have got my hand slapped more times than I could remember for going this approach, but I think to me, just you talk about that partnership, right? It's be curious, ask the questions.
Yep.
And I'm probably going to get some flack for this one, but don't say no. I think really what built my credibility as an analyst and even into my management side of it was I tried not to say no as much as possible. And by that, it was, I believe there's always a creative solution. And that's how I built my credibility as an analyst, and even into my leadership days of working with that team to say, look, yeah, we can do it, but I need some help from you, right? Or yes, we can do this, and I need you to help me support by doing X, Y, and Z, whether it's asking someone to forego a vacation day. If they don't necessarily just ask them, they don't have to say yes or no, but really be creative in the solutioning around how we went about our daily business, right? And that was one of the things that I tried to instill in our team outside of just the general overall accountability, right? Was be a partner with them, extend that olive branch, work with them. I don't want to hear the word no, we can't do this. There's always a solution, we can figure it out. This isn't life or death. It's workforce management. It's some level of control, but I think, I probably would get some flack from some of my peers. Or
I think you've explained it really well. I mean, when you first said it, I was like, don't say no. Okay, so like in workforce management, sometimes it's black and white, but you're absolutely right. Like the more you work in that gray where you're looking for a trade-off, you're looking for a solution, I think you shouldn't get any flack for it. But I mean, if you just said don't say no, maybe. But yeah, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I really kind of as my thinking evolved in more of that strategic, but also just partnership, right? I mean, I knew that if I worked well with others, right, that's almost a golden rule, right? That I would get that partnership in spades in return. And there was no malicious intent or manipulation. It was just evolving from this black and white, right, to this gray area. There's always ways we can solve for these things. I mean, I really looked at it from the approach of these frontline agents and our operations partners. I mean, God love them, right? I mean, I said it earlier, I have no idea how they do that job. I mean, especially in the healthcare world where you're talking money, you're talking life, just those couple of key points, right, that are real kind of near and dear to everyone's heart, right? They're people too, right? I mean, we expect them to sit there at a desk, whether in this world now remote in a home office or in a cubicle in a brick and mortar office, right? That's really kind of the approach that we really tried to take was, and that's kind of goes back to the don't say no. I really be creative, be solutioning, figure it out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But 9 chances out of 10, I'm confident we could find a solution. because again, it just goes back, there's a human element to this, right? They're not robots. They're not, sitting at a desk and just fielding calls after calls after calls after calls, right? I mean, the partnership piece of it was really, really important to me, that we worked with them, including we did roundtables with the frontline agents. That's really important to me as well, as getting their feedback. Because look, when you look at the role of WFM, I mean, you're touching a lot of different aspects of someone's life. When you can take a break, when you can go to lunch, when you can take time off. I mean, those are some pretty tough things to, I think, meld in terms of a planning process, and not losing that human element of the day to day.
So true. Yeah. I once had a customer service director for, it wasn't to me, thankfully, or I'm glad I kind of learned from someone else's mistakes. But the other person presenting to him at the time had said that I don't do people, I do numbers, which is kind of like, sometimes something that sort of sticks in workforce management professionals' heads. No, that's not true. Workforce is all about people, and the more that we can translate numbers into people, or the other way around as well. But it is, you're right. You're so right. It's about people, and that's who we plan for.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's the human element too, right? Yeah, when you look at it, yeah, it's a number on the ledger, right? But there's a human life involved in this planning process.
Yeah.
They have things that come up, and we just need to try and be as flexible as possible, in my opinion.
Brilliant advice. Matthew, we're out of time, so huge thanks for setting aside ton to time today, and 6 a.m. in the morning. I think, geez, I don't know. Like you're obviously are great in the morning, which I'm better as in the night. So, but thank you for taking the time, and yeah, you're a real rock star. Super interesting insights. I think that human side is something really important to learn. And some of the other messages around that you've also provided in terms of that engagement and curiosity, really great advice. Thank you very, very much, and I think there's huge amounts that people can learn from listening to you today. Appreciate it.
I appreciate that. It was a joy, and again, I appreciate you reaching out and asking me to be a part of this. I look forward to future conversations, and best of luck, and I appreciate this.
Thanks, Matt. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to WFM. This podcast is made and produced by André Leitão, Bilge Hentolun, Doug Carsteton, Gonçalo Gomes, and Kim Paz. If you like this show, don't forget to share it with your friends and colleagues. Visit our website, wwfm.com, to find more exclusive interviews and WFM content. See you next time. All rights reserved.